My grandson Jacob sits on my right side, holding my wrinkled hand. My granddaughter Emma sits on my left, her young face already wet with tears even though I haven't said anything yet. They're good children, the best, and they deserve to know the truth about their grandfather before I leave this world. "Come closer," I whisper, my voice barely working anymore. 87 years is a long time to use a voice. I need to tell you something I should have told your father, but I was too ashamed. But now I'm running out of time, and you need to hear this. "Grandpa, you should rest," Emma says softly, squeezing my hand. "I'll rest soon enough, sweetheart, forever. But first, listen. Listen to the story of how your grandfather, this old man you've known your whole lives as kind and gentle, was once the worst kind of monster. And listen to how a little girl, no bigger than you were at 7, Emma, saved my soul with just one touch." I close my eyes, and suddenly I'm not in this comfortable bed anymore. I'm 65 years in the past, and I'm not old Thomas McKinney, beloved grandfather and shopkeeper. I'm Tommy Mad Dog McKinney, the most feared gunman in the Arizona Territory. I was 22 years old, and I'd already killed 9 men. 9! I can still see their faces sometimes, even now. Every single one. That's the thing about killing. It marks you forever. People think you forget, but you don't. You remember every face, every moment, every time you pulled that trigger and watched the light go out of someone's eyes. I wasn't born evil. Nobody is. But I became evil, piece by piece, choice by choice. My father was a drunk who beat my mother until she died when I was 12. I ran away and fell in with the wrong crowd, older men who taught me how to steal, how to shoot, how to take what I wanted from people weaker than me. By the time I was 16, I was robbing stagecoaches. By 18, I'd killed my first man in a gunfight. By 20, I had a reputation, Mad Dog McKinney. They called me that because I fought like a wild animal, vicious, unpredictable, without mercy. I took pride in that name. I thought it made me powerful. I thought being feared was the same as being respected. I was wrong about everything. The night my life changed started like any other night of violence and sin. We'd hit a bank in the town of Copper Ridge, me and 4 other outlaws. We'd gotten away with nearly $3,000, but the job had gone bad. The bank clerk had pulled a hidden gun, and in the chaos that followed, I'd shot him. I'd shot the sheriff who came running. I'd shot my way out of that town, leaving blood and screams behind me. We split up to avoid the posse I knew would be coming. I rode hard into the desert, heading for the old mission ruins where we'd agreed to meet up in 3 days. But my horse stepped in a prairie dog hole about 10 miles out, went down hard, and threw me. I hit the ground and felt my left leg snap. The pain was so sharp and sudden that I actually screamed, something I hadn't done since I was a child. My horse limped away, favoring its own injured leg, and I knew it wasn't going to carry me anywhere. I had to walk. I hobbled through the desert for hours as the sun set, my legs screaming with every step, leaving a trail of blood in the dust. I was dizzy from pain and dehydration. I knew I needed to find shelter, food, water, and a place to hide before the law caught up to me. Just as full darkness fell, I saw it, an old abandoned homestead. The house had mostly collapsed, but there was a barn still standing, weathered and leaning, but intact enough to provide shelter. I limped inside, found a corner filled with old hay, and collapsed. My leg was swollen and purple, bent at an angle that wasn't natural. Might have been broken, might have just been badly sprained. Either way, I wasn't going anywhere for a while. I had my saddlebags with me, my guns, some ammunition, and a little food I'd packed that morning. Some jerky, half a loaf of bread, and a canteen of water that was nearly empty. I ate the jerky and half the bread, drank the last of my water, and tried to ignore the throbbing agony in my leg. As I ate, I reloaded my revolvers with shaking hands. If the law found me here, I'd go down fighting. I'd decided years ago that I'd never hang. Better to die with a gun in my hand than a rope around my neck. That's when I heard it. A small sound, a shuffle of feet on dirt. I had my gun drawn and cocked in an instant, pointing at the barn door. "Who's there?" I growled. "Show yourself, or I'll shoot." A tiny figure stepped into the doorway, silhouetted against the moonlight. It was a child. A little girl, no more than 7 years old. She was the smallest, thinnest thing I'd ever seen. Her dress was nothing but rags, so torn and dirty I couldn't even tell what color it had been originally. Her feet were bare, cut and bleeding. Her hair was a matted mess of tangles. Her face was smudged with dirt, and her eyes were enormous in her hollow, sunken face. She looked like a ghost, like death itself had come for me in the shape of a starving child. "What do you want?" I snapped, not lowering my gun. "Get out of here!" She didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there staring at me with those huge, dark eyes. "I said get out!" I shouted, my voice echoing in the barn. Slowly, she raised one tiny hand and pointed at the bread in my lap, the half loaf I'd been saving for morning. She was hungry. Something cold twisted in my chest, but I pushed it away. I'd learned long ago not to feel things like pity or compassion. Those feelings made you weak, made you vulnerable, made you hesitate when you needed to act. "This is my food," I said harshly. "Go find your own." She lowered her hand but didn't leave, just kept staring at me with those eyes that seemed too old for such a young face. "Are you deaf?" I snarled. "Get out! Go back to wherever you came from." Still, she didn't move, didn't cry, didn't beg, didn't say a word, just looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Not exactly sad, not exactly anything, just empty. Finally, I grabbed a rock from the ground and threw it at her. It landed at her feet, kicking up dust. "Go!" That time she turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness outside. I told myself I didn't care, that she was just some orphan brat, probably living wild in these ruins. Not my problem. I had my own troubles. I wrapped my leg as best I could with strips torn from my shirt, then lay back in the hay and tried to sleep. But I couldn't stop thinking about those eyes, those empty, haunted eyes in that tiny face. I finally fell into a fitful sleep filled with nightmares. 9 dead men standing around me in a circle, accusing me with their cold, dead stares. I woke to the sound of horses and men's voices. The sun was barely up, the barn still gray with early morning light. I sat up fast, ignoring the scream of pain from my leg, and grabbed my guns. Through the cracks in the barn walls I could see them, 4 lawmen, local deputies from the look of them, probably from Copper Ridge, tracking me from the blood trail my leg had left. "Tracks lead right into this barn. He's in there." "Could be a trap. Mad Dog's killed more men than I can count." 4 of us, 1 of him, and he's injured. We got him." I positioned myself behind some old barrels, both guns drawn and aimed at the door. My hands were steady despite my racing heart. This was it, my last stand. I'd take at least 2 of them before they got me. The barn door creaked open slowly. "Come out, McKinney. We got you surrounded. No way out." I was about to start shooting when something impossible happened. A small figure darted past the deputies and into the barn, the little girl from last night, moving so fast they barely saw her. "Hey, stop!" one deputy shouted. The girl ran straight toward the back corner of the barn, nowhere near where I was hiding, and started screaming at the top of her lungs. "Help! Help! There's a monster! A monster in the corner!" All 4 deputies rushed into the barn, guns drawn, heading toward where she was pointing and screaming. In the confusion, with all their attention on the girl in the back corner she was indicating, I slipped out through a gap in the side wall of the barn. The old boards were loose, and I squeezed through, biting my tongue to keep from crying out at the pain in my leg. I limped away as fast as I could, heading for a dry creek bed about 50 yards away. Behind me I could hear the deputies shouting, realizing they'd been tricked. "There's nothing here! Where'd he go? Find him, he can't have gone far on that leg." But I was already sliding down into the creek bed, using the brush and rocks to hide myself. I crawled along that creek bed for what felt like hours, my leg leaving a trail of blood behind me, but the water from recent rains washing it away. By the time the sun was high overhead, I was miles away, hidden in a cave I'd found in the canyon walls. The deputies never found me, and the only reason I was alive was because a little girl I'd thrown a rock at had saved my life. I spent the next 3 days hiding in that cave, barely able to move. My leg was infected now, the wound hot and swollen. I had no food, no water except what I could catch when it rained. I was dying slowly, and I knew it. but I couldn't stop thinking about her. The little girl. Why had she saved me? I'd been cruel to her, driven her away, thrown a rock at her. I'd done nothing to deserve her help. Yet she'd risked herself to save me from the law. Why? On the fourth day, my fever broke. The infection was still bad, but I wasn't delirious anymore. I could move again, though every step was agony. I had to find her, had to know why she'd done it. I limped back to the old homestead ruins. It took me most of the day to get there, and I nearly passed out from the pain and weakness. When I arrived at sunset, I found her sitting outside the barn, holding a dented tin cup and staring at the horizon. She looked even thinner than before, if that was possible. Her lips were cracked and bleeding from dehydration. I approached slowly, not wanting to scare her. When I was about 10 feet away, she turned and looked at me with those same empty eyes. "Hello," I said quietly. My voice was hoarse from days without water. She didn't answer, just watched me. I sat down heavily on the ground, my leg refusing to hold me up any longer. We sat in silence for a long moment. "Why did you do it? Why did you save me? I was horrible to you. I threw a rock at you. I refused to help you when you were hungry. Why would you risk yourself for someone like me?" She was quiet for so long I thought she wouldn't answer. Then, in a voice so soft I almost couldn't hear it, she spoke. "I'm going to die soon." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "What?" "I'm sick," she said, still in that same flat, emotionless tone. "Been sick for a long time. My mama died from it last year. My papa died from it 2 years before that. My little brother died from it last month. I'm the last one left, and now I'm dying too." I stared at her, unable to speak. She was 7 years old, and she was telling me about death with less emotion than most people talked about the weather. "There's nobody left, nobody to take care of me, nobody to bury me when I go. I've been alone for a while now, just waiting." "Waiting for what?" I whispered. "To die, to be with my family again." She looked at me then, really looked at me. "You're the first person I've seen in weeks. When I found you in the barn, I thought maybe." "Maybe what?" "Maybe you'd be kind. Maybe you'd share your food with a dying girl. Maybe you'd prove that there was still goodness somewhere in this world." Shame washed over me like cold water. "But I wasn't kind. I drove you away." "Yes," still no emotion in her voice or face. Not anger, not sadness, nothing. "You did. Then why did you save me from the law?" She tilted her head slightly, considering the question. "Because I wanted to give you another chance. I wanted to see if there was any kindness left in you at all." I felt tears starting in my eyes, something I hadn't felt since I was a boy. "I don't understand." For the first time something flickered in her eyes, something alive. She stood up, walked over to me, and knelt down so we were eye to eye. "When I asked you for bread that night," she said softly, "I wasn't really hungry for bread." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I was hungry to know if there was still kindness in you." The words cut through me like a knife. I felt something break inside my chest, something that had been hard and cold for so many years I'd forgotten it was there. My heart. "I wanted to know," she continued, her voice still quiet, but somehow the loudest thing I'd ever heard, "if a man who had chosen to be bad could still choose to be good, if someone who had done terrible things could still do something kind, if it was too late for someone like you." "And?" I could barely speak. "What did you find out?" She reached out one tiny hand and placed it on my chest, right over my heart. Her touch was so light, so gentle, like a bird landing for just a moment. "I found out," she whispered, "that you're still alive in there, under all the anger and violence and fear. There's still a real person inside you, someone who could be good again if he chose to be." That's when I broke. I fell forward onto my knees, my bad legs screaming in protest, and I sobbed like a child, great heaving sobs that shook my entire body. All the years of violence, all the men I'd killed, all the pain I'd caused, it came pouring out of me in wave after wave of grief and shame and regret. And this tiny, dying little girl just knelt there beside me, her small hand on my back, waiting patiently for the storm to pass. I don't know how long I cried. Could have been minutes, could have been hours, but when I finally stopped, when I finally raised my head and looked at her through my tears, I saw something I hadn't seen before. She was smiling, just a little bit, but it was there. the first expression I'd seen on her face other than emptiness. "What's your name?" I asked, my voice broken and raw. "Grace," she said. "My name is Grace." Of course it was. I stayed with Grace for the next 5 days. I found water in an old well that was almost dry, but there was enough. I foraged for food, wild plants, roots, anything I could find. It wasn't much, but I gave most of it to her. My leg was still bad, still infected, but I didn't care anymore. All that mattered was making sure Grace wasn't alone. We talked those 5 days. She told me about her family, about her parents and little brother, about the farm they'd had before the sickness came, about her dreams of becoming a teacher someday, about the songs her mother used to sing. And I told her everything, about every terrible thing I'd done, every man I'd killed, every crime I'd committed, every choice that had turned me into Mad Dog McKinney instead of just Thomas. She listened without judgment, just nodding occasionally, her hand sometimes reaching out to touch mine when the confessions became too heavy. "You can still change," she told me on the 3rd day. "It's never too late to choose to be good." "But I've done so much evil," I said. "How can I ever make up for it?" "You can't," she said simply. "You can't undo what you've done, but you can choose what you do next. You can choose to stop being Mad Dog McKinney. You can choose to be Thomas again, to be the person you were supposed to be before everything went wrong." On the morning of the 6th day, I woke to find Grace lying very still beside me. She'd gotten much worse overnight. Her breathing was shallow and labored. Her skin was burning with fever. Her eyes, when they opened, were glassy and unfocused. "Grace," I whispered, taking her tiny hand in mine. "Grace, stay with me." She smiled weakly. "It's time," she whispered. "I can see them. Mama, Papa, little Joseph. They're waiting for me." "No," I said, tears streaming down my face. "Not yet. Please, not yet." "It's okay," she said, her voice fading. "I'm not scared. I got to spend my last days with a friend. I got to see you change. I got to know that I helped save someone." "You did," I sobbed. "You saved me, Grace. You saved my soul. You brought me back from the darkness." She squeezed my hand with what little strength she had left. "Then my life meant something. Then I didn't die for nothing." "Your life meant everything," I told her, holding her close. "Everything." She took one more breath, smiled one more time, and then she was gone. I held her for a long time, rocking back and forth, crying until I had no tears left. Then I carried her out of that barn, found a beautiful spot on a hill overlooking the valley, and I buried her there. I used my bare hands to dig that grave, ignoring the pain in my leg, working until my hands bled. I marked her grave with stones arranged in a cross, and I said every prayer I could remember from my childhood, prayers my mother had taught me before my father's fists silenced her forever. "Thank you, Grace," I whispered at her grave. "Thank you for seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself. Thank you for giving me another chance. I promise I won't waste it. I promise I'll be the man you believed I could be." Then I stood up, walked down that hill, and headed straight for the nearest town that had a sheriff's office. I turned myself in.
The trial was quick, I tell my grandchildren, my voice barely a whisper now. I confessed to everything, every crime, every killing. I expected to hang. "But you didn't," Jacob says quietly, tears running down his face. "No, the judge was a fair man. He said that the fact I'd turned myself in, that I'd confessed, that I'd shown genuine remorse, it counted for something. He sentenced me to 25 years hard labor instead of the rope." "How long did you serve?" Emma asks, wiping her eyes. 18 years. Got out early for good behavior. I was 40 years old when I walked out of that prison. Most of my life gone, but I was free. Free from my past, free from being Mad Dog McKinney, free to start over. "And you never went back to being an outlaw?" Jacob asks. "Never, not once. I came to this town, opened my shop, lived quietly and honestly. Met your grandmother 5 years after I got out, built a life, had your father, and I spent every single day trying to be the man Grace believed I could be." I pause, gathering my strength for the last part. Every year on the anniversary of the day she died, I go back to that hill. I bring flowers. I sit by her grave and tell her about my life, about all the good things I've done, all the people I've helped, all the times I chose kindness over cruelty. I tell her about your grandmother, about your father, about you two. We'll go there, Emma says fiercely, squeezing my hand. After you're gone, we'll keep visiting her. We'll tell her about you, about how you honored her sacrifice. Thank you, sweetheart. I manage a weak smile. That means everything to me. Grandpa, Jacob asks, his voice shaken, do you think you'll see her again when I die? I finish for him. I hope so. I hope she's waiting there on the other side, ready to show me the way. I hope I get to tell her one more time that she saved my life, that her kindness changed everything. I can feel it now. Death is very close. My breathing is getting harder. My vision is starting to fade at the edges. But I'm not afraid. I love you both, I whisper to my grandchildren. Be good. Be kind. Remember that it's never too late to change, and that one small act of compassion can save someone's soul. Grace taught me that. Now I'm teaching you. We love you too, Grandpa, they say together, both crying openly now. I close my eyes and see her, Grace, looking exactly as she did 65 years ago. 7 years old, standing in that barn doorway, asking me without words if there was still any good left in me. And I hear her voice, clear as day. It's time, Thomas. I've been waiting for you. I smile. I laugh. One last joyful sound that surprises my grandchildren. She's here, I manage to say. Grace is here. She came for me. And then I'm running toward her, young again, my leg healed, no more pain, no more regret. She's smiling and holding out her hand. You did good, Thomas, she says. You did so good. I'm proud of you. I take her hand, and together we walk into the light. Behind me, in a bedroom that's already fading away, I hear my grandchildren crying. But they're not crying just from sadness. They're crying because they've just witnessed something beautiful, the end of a story that began with violence and ended with redemption. The story of how a 7-year-old girl named Grace changed a gunman's life with one touch. And the story of how that gunman spent the rest of his life proving that she was right about him, that it's never too late, that there's always a chance to be better, that one moment of kindness can echo through decades. My name was Thomas McKinney. I was once a monster called Mad Dog, but a little girl saw something better in me, and I spent 65 years becoming the man she believed I could be. And now, at last, I get to see her again and tell her thank you. One last time. Thank you, Grace. Thank you for saving me.